You just give it one quick second here, Marshall, and your shoulder's going to be in the shot. Yeah. And usually takes about 14 seconds or so.
Oh, wow. We've got it down to a science.
It's spinning.
So I do like this.
So yeah, that's interesting attention. Okay, now publish.
We are live.
Room.
Oh,
We're officially live.
Okay.
I can watch us. I can watch us.
You can
as
watch
we are
us
live.
watch
Your
ourselves.
shoulder is in there.
Ah, there we are.
There we go. All right, so here we are. We're live. The lights are on. I'm back. I have a beard. Michael has a beard.
I do.
I had back surgery. I'm healthy now, and well, getting there anyway. And they announced Pioneer. What happened in the last month otherwise?
On the cast or in Modern or?
I don't know. I just haven't seen you in a month.
Yeah, that's true.
I just came in here
I'm
30
glad you're
minutes
feeling
ago.
better.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really good to see you. It's good to see you guys all who are watching this. You know, we decided this felt like a live episode. I feel like everyone's talking about Pioneer. And yes, you guys are watching the Masters of Modern podcast. That's what this is. We talk about Modern on this show. We have for almost 5 years now. Alex Kessler, our trusty co-host, is not in the country at the moment. So we are doing the show here in his stead. And we are really excited to talk to you guys about Pioneer. It's a crazy big announcement. And I think let's get a couple shout-outs out of the way, and then let's just get straight into the conversation.
Let's do the intro for the podcast too, so we
Yeah.
can have the and welcome back to the Masters of Modern. I'm your host, Ben.
Oh yeah, good call.
For the podcast, right? We
I've been out for a
this
while.
podcast too,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can do it. I've done it for the last 2 weeks.
Do you want to do it?
No.
He's a practical expert.
He's
at
an
it
expert. So what we usually do is be like music.
Yep.
And welcome back to the Masters of Modern podcast. I'm your host, Ben Bateman, joined today by Mr. Michael Grothy.
Hi, everyone.
Round of applause, guys. Excellent. Now, we are back here in studio to talk to you guys about Magic the Gathering, about Modern, about Pioneer, the big format that they announced,
Yep.
which is a non-rotating format that goes all the way back to Return to Ravnica. It does not include any of the crazy master sets that they've printed with Modern cards in them. It's only standard expansions, and there are only 5 cards banned to start this format out, and that is the 5 Khans of Tarkir fetch lands. Otherwise, it's an open format. You can play Treasure Cruise in this format.
Yep.
And
Pretty
take your
wild.
time.
And Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So, okay, so in the chat here, Kiwi Doc says, wow, Seth and Vince have competition now. It's kind of a joke
the
title.
Beard, the beard. No, it's
It's
the beard thing. They
Yeah.
like the two of them are like having
beard war.
a beard war. Yeah. I think it's more that their
I'm
fans
Team Seth,
are in on the
Gotcha.
beard war more than them themselves.
I've always wanted
They like to
have
joke about it.
facial hair. I've never been able to grow it. So apparently in the last month I went through puberty. And
That's
now
a
I'm
good
back.
Brillo pad you got going on. You could scrub dishes.
Yeah,
with,
right? Exactly. There you go. So, you know, that's what we're doing. But we are here to talk to you guys about all of the Magic things. And as I mentioned before, the start and restart intro.
Yep.
I missed the last month because I've been on my back on the couch. I couldn't sit before I had back surgery, so I haven't played a game of Magic, unfortunately, in a while. It's been tough. I've really
You played
wanted
with
to.
Eldraine at all?
No, I didn't even get
No
I couldn't
Eldraine.
physically get to the pre-release because I couldn't sit down.
That's
So
rough.
I got a pre-release pack somebody like got for me and just gave me. I opened up the Scions Planeswalker.
Oh, that's cool.
Card's
That's
sweet.
Potentially modern playable.
Card's really good. I mean, it's not as good obviously as like what's his name?
Dak
Oko?
Faden.
Not as good as Dak, but still is good. Yeah.
Or Oko.
Oko has destroyed like competitive Magic since I got hurt. I
Yeah, it's
saw that.
interesting.
He's seeing play in literally every single format.
Yeah.
We were talking about that card and we're like, oh yeah, that card's pretty cool. It's interesting. I was like, I don't think it's that good. And then I got hurt. And now I come back.
Yeah.
And it's like $50. or
Yeah,
something like that.
the episode that Ruben and I recorded, we basically just like talked about a bunch of different decks where it was playable. I mean, we talked about other stuff too, just like cool stuff in Modern, and a lot of the cool stuff in Modern is Oko. And obviously other formats as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's what Pioneer is. So that's gonna be the focus of today's conversation is about the Pioneer format, what we expect from it, and kind of what's gonna happen as we move forward. A couple quick shout outs if you guys are watching this live. Looks like that list of watchers is creeping up here. Be sure to hit that like button if we can get the likes and the watchers evened out. It actually really helps the episode do well and people find it. So just hit that thumbs up button. It's really, really helpful if you do. Let's make sure to also hit the bell if you want to be notified when we go live.
Yeah, because we go live sometimes unexpectedly. So,
Yes.
you know, if you hit the bell, you'll get the notification. You can come watch us
Yes.
if we decide to do an impromptu stream.
And we will probably be saving a Q&A section sort of for the end of the episode. Super Chat is live, so if you want to get our attention 100%, make sure that we do see your comment. use that. Otherwise, we'll just try to be as vigilant with the comments as we can and answer as many questions as we can throughout the episode.
Yeah, I mean, I think...
What?
I'll keep an eye on it.
Yes. I think for now we are going to end up just kind of... There's a lot to unpack with Pioneer, and we're probably going to just kind of lay some groundwork for what Pioneer is if people haven't heard, what our basic thoughts on it, and then we'll get into questions.
Yeah, and we're going to, I think, just take... I'm going to let you just ramble for a quick second as I share a link or two to make sure that...
let's do it. So, other shout-outs. You should follow us on Twitter. We're at the MMCast. Ben is at Ben Bateman Media. I'm at Dudard, Dudardd.
Has your Twitter been growing since you've started hosting the cast more often?
A little bit.
Do you interact more?
No.
You were like a lurker for a long time.
I'm still a lurker.
Okay.
I don't.
Sweet.
I don't know. There's something about social media. I like social media as like a content feed.
Yeah.
Where I can like see. I get a lot of good stuff from there. I follow a lot of Magic pros, Magic content creators, friends that I met through Magic, and I follow other stuff, video game news, and I can basically you can follow whatever you want and get whatever kind of content you want injected directly into your Twitter timeline, and I like all of that. As far as posting on social media in general, I'm not
it's just not your thing.
Not a big poster, but I've had people after listening to the cast like tweet at me questions. I'll always answer people's questions. If people want to interact with me, Alex tags me and stuff sometimes, and I'll kind of like have a conversation with somebody on one of Alex's posts.
He does post a lot.
Yeah, I'm just like unsolicited opinions thrown out there on the internet, not really my strong suit, but solicited opinions, I've got them.
Sure.
But yeah, and then continuing on Twitter, Alex is at Kess Wiley.
Yes, he is.
If you want to follow our absentee host, see what he's up to. He's been posting a lot of food pictures from his travels.
In another country, that's exciting.
Sacrificing a lot, gaining a lot of life.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to play with food at all. Like, I literally haven't ever had a food come into play under my control.
Neither have I, but food only really shows up in black and green. So if your sealed pool...
That's not true.
The only cards that make food that aren't
there's
black
colorless
and green.
cards. There's like a Witch's Oven, which I've ended up playing in decks. There's I'm trying to remember. There's like a white enchantment that gives all your creatures +0/+1, comes in, makes a food. I haven't personally played with it. I've seen other people play with it. There's Turn into a Pumpkin, which is a blue card that makes a food. I mean, it shows up.
Were you able to post in Facebook group?
Yes.
You did. Excellent. All right, we are now posted and shared from Twitter and Facebook. So the shout-outs are out there. Looks like we got up to 50 people watching right now. So again, guys, hit that like button if you're just tuning in. We're going to be talking about Pioneer right now. One more time, we're going to give a little summary of what it is, and I think we just jump into it. So
yeah, let's do it.
Pioneer is a new non-rotating format that was announced yesterday. It is not intended to replace Modern. They were very clear about that. It goes back to Return to Ravnica, which is, I think, 2011 or 12 is when that happens.
Yeah, I think it's 2011.
Mm-hmm.
It is a format that has 5 cards banned total. It's the 5 fetch lands originally printed in Onslaught, but they were reprinted in Cons. There are no fetch lands whatsoever in Pioneer. However, there are shocklands. And that's basically it. You cut off a lot of the weird stuff that happens in, like, Time Spiral block, a lot of, like, sort of the strange stuff that's in, like, the original, say, Ravnica set, or any kind of odd cards that you would have to ban, like Kamigawa cards, and you end up with Magic that all feels pretty cohesive and pretty current. Now, there are standard decks that are going to make it, that were really powerful in the last, 5 years, that'll just continue to be powerful. But I guess the real question about Pioneer, and I'll just start by posing this to you, specifically, why do you think it exists? Why did they do it?
So this was something, these two stats...
It is not available on Arena. It's to be played in paper and on Magic the Gathering Online. That's important to note. Not on Arena.
Yeah, it's not the Arena Eternal format, which is still historic, and still Wizards has no intent to support it and will let you play it once a week if you want.
Yes.
Or once a month if you want. Is that the monthly one and Brawl's the weekly one? I don't know. But regardless, historic is a joke. But
really, is it just totally bombed?
Well, it's Wizards is not trying to support it.
If they could decide to support it as it stands right now, historic is just kind of a way for them to get have an excuse to not compensate you for return
right. Yeah, the economy was terrible. I remember we had a whole conversation about that. I just in the last month again, I've had like a bag over my head, so I just I haven't really gotten to.
We'll fill you in. So something that was in the article announcing the Pioneer format, they mentioned that when Modern was created. Magic was 18 years old. So there was like 18 years of Magic, and they were like, that is so much Magic, we need to kind of introduce a non-rotating format that kind of breaks it up a little bit and makes it easier for people who weren't playing in the beginning to get into this format
and
not have their cards rotate. Right, so also mentioned in the article, and this wasn't a point that was brought up in the article, but after reading these two paragraphs back to back, Modern now has 16 years worth of sets in it. So Modern is almost as big now as Legacy was at the time of Modern's inception.
Right.
So they felt that they needed to break up 18 years worth of Magic. Well, now it's 16 years. So they decided again, it's probably getting about time to break it up. Especially with like Modern kind of always having some degenerate deck rise to the top. And not to say that I don't think Modern is in a good place right now, because I do. But, you know, kind of breaking it up a little bit allows them to not have to, you know, they can kind of ignore some of their mistakes in the same way that Modern is allowed to ignore some of the mistakes of Legacy with like fetch land or dual lands, Brainstorm, Force of Will, Ancient Tomb. You know, a lot of the Magic's big mistakes from the past get to be ignored in Modern. Well, now Pioneer, I always want to say Frontier.
Frontier, I know. This is the overextended versus Modern conversation, right?
Pioneer gets to ignore some of the mistakes of Modern, which is like Scar's Mirrodin block, original Mirrodin block. You get to ignore a lot of the like bust artifact shenanigans, no Storm, a lot of the stuff that like
no Lily or Snaps.
Yeah,
that's
no
really
Innistrad, no Lightning Bolt, no Path to
Cascade
Exile.
spells.
Yeah, no Cascade. There's like a lot of stuff that, you know, either was kind of a mistake or was just like really pushed the envelope of power level to the point where like, you know, you can't play white decks without Path to Exile, and like you can't really play red decks without Lightning Bolt most of the time unless you're playing Chalice of the Void or something. And like it kind of like constricts deck building a little bit, and this is kind of a new frontier. And I will also say that one of the mistakes of Modern probably is fetchlands and shocklands. And so they made sure, even though fetchlands and shocklands are both within this time frame, to not have that be a thing.
Yeah, so I think that's really interesting. I mean, we've obviously had, you know, we've had Wizards people on the show before. Gavin's been on here several times. We've had a lot of conversations with Andrew Brown over the years, both on the show and off, about kind of Modern and why it's awesome, but also some of the limitations that come with it. The power level being so high and some of the things that make it the format that it is. One of the suggestions over the years has been to ban fetchlands. That's a thing, you've heard it time and time again when you talk about Modern. And it's just not, it wasn't ever going to be realistic considering how much money people have invested in those cards over the last several years, how many times they've been reprinted as chase cards.
Yeah, and it's like one of the reasons that they don't ban Brainstorm in Legacy. Like if you look at the stats in Legacy, a little bit less so recently, I think, but throughout Legacy's history, there's just like a, you know, 75% of the decks are playing blue or something. Because Brainstorm is such a powerful card selection tool with fetchlands. But Wizards is always like, well, you know, we get that it stifles diversity a little bit, but we feel that it's like one of the pillars of the format, and like it kind of, Brainstorm is one of the things that defines Legacy. And I would say, especially with them banning them in Pioneer, they feel that fetches and shocks is one of the things that defines Modern.
100%. I mean, it feels like if you were gonna write up like sort of the architecture of the format, when people ask you, what do you do if you want to get into Modern? There's a short list of things you suggest. One thing I'll always tell people is get the lands. Like, you have to start with the lands because that's going to determine...
The lands are pretty much always the fetchlands and shocklands.
And they're the most expensive cards in Modern for the most part. On the whole, they're the cards that always, if they go down, manage to somehow find a way to go back up. Yeah. So that's like one thing that this format is obviously specifically designed to target, is they wanted to change that one aspect specifically. You also mentioned some of the really powerful artifact strategies and some of the stranger interactions with the card sets that were printed prior to New World Order, which I think is 2010.
Yeah, I mean, New World Order is more about complexity at common. So, like, for example, Lorwyn block was the catalyst for New World Order, where, like, all of the creatures had some sort of tribal synergy. They all have, like, tap activated abilities, or you pay
Silvergill Dowser, the fairies of Merfolk, tapper at common.
Yeah, and then, you know, tons of, like, activated abilities and board states being super complicated, even within draft with just commons and uncommons. New World Order doesn't affect Modern as much because we have access to rares and mythics that are significantly, you know, more powerful and more complicated than Silvergill Dowser. But Silvergill Dowser is kind of the poster child for the Old World Order, I guess, in that it's like such a complicated common that creates complex board states. But I don't think that really affects Modern as much. I will say that there's kind of other design philosophies that are, you know, reflected in Pioneer that, like, you know, not necessarily in earlier modern sets.
Yeah, to me it really feels like with the introduction of M10, probably M11 around that time period, which obviously is that's the modern, that is the Frontier, Pioneer card pool. That does to me start to feel like that's like the sets are designed like more tightly. They're like sort of less all over the place. If Future Sight is the best example of a set that's just like, how is this a standard set? A lot of those like core sets as they started to go forward from 11, 12, 13, they're really well designed with like the multicolored uncommons that so clearly represent what they're supposed to in terms of like a color combination, the types of commons and uncommons, just like an understanding of what's more fun, you know, less powerful blue spells, more powerful creatures, stuff that new players, even at rare, can understand why it's good. But you don't have to think as hard about why a card is good.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the creatures, and this is more of a modern thing than a Pioneer thing, but like that is one of the big design philosophies that's been, you know, creeping throughout Magic's history, is that if you look at Legacy, like a lot of the spells that get played are like pre-modern spells, like Brainstorm, Force of Will, Swords of Plowshares. I guess Thoughtseize is modern, but
yeah, I mean you have banned modern
Cabal
ones.
Therapy. Yeah. So and then in the creatures that get played in Legacy are pretty much all modern creatures because creatures are just terrible pre-modern. There's like some busted graveyard stuff like Icarid that like, but for the most part you're seeing like Delver of Secrets, Tarmogoyf,
right?
You know, Young Pyromancer, Monastery Mentor, Dark Confidant, Knight of the Reliquary, like all these creatures that are staples of Legacy are also legal in Modern. And it's interesting because like a lot of those more powerful ones are kind of early Modern, so it's like a little bit like they dialed back the power level. Like if you look at a lot of the staple creatures in Modern, you know, barring the Eldrazi, I guess, but like Tarmogoyf is not in this format.
Right.
Noble Hierarch, Birds of Paradise, both not in this format.
Yeah, so
Snapcaster Mage, not in this format.
So let me ask you a question from a card availability standpoint. This is something I started thinking about when they announced it, right? If you have a database on your phone, an app, like we like to use Decked, it's an app that's really helpful. Very soon, I'm sure there'll be an update with Pioneer and it'll separate it out. If it doesn't,
Yeah, they said on Twitter they're working on it, so it should be probably this week.
So that's great. But if you don't have that and you have to start to think offhand about just a basically arbitrary separation. I mean, you can define it however you want to, but like in terms of when I think about the card face change, right? Like that's the simplicity of Modern. Think about a year. I think about stuff specifically that since the inception of Modern has never been legal. It was really easy for me to understand. This is pretty hard for me to wrap my head around, to be honest. I looked in the chat just a second ago and somebody was like, is Merfolk a deck? And I was like, well, probably Merfolk's a deck.
It is, yeah.
And then I was thinking, wait, when was Master of the Pearl Trident printed? Let's go with a core set. Maybe that was a pre...
That's true. The core sets are really hard for me to keep track of as well. I keep thinking of core set cards, and I'm not always sure if they're in. So the Titans are out, and Lightning Bolt is out, Doomblade is out.
Rancor's probably out, or was that...
Rancor, I believe, is out.
It's 12, I think. Rancor
Yeah,
might have been
2014 is the first.
Oh, so yeah, it's definitely
the first
out.
core. Is the first core that is in Frontier.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2014, but like...
Or Pioneer.
Was Rancor in 2014 or 2013? I don't remember.
It's definitely not 14. It's 13 or earlier.
Yeah, I think so. It's a little bit hard to keep track of. I agree with you there, especially with core sets.
So that's the part of it when I was trying to wrap my brain around, like, conceptually. All right, I want to come up with some sweet brews today. I want to start thinking about these and posting them. And then, like, I kept seeing people post cool stuff and just being like, my brain's not going to work that fast right
so
now.
Scryfall is a deck builder app. If they don't have an app, you have to use their website. But they have Pioneer already supported.
Yeah, I literally just clicked on it. So there are 6,410 cards currently legal in Pioneer.
So there was a bug earlier today on Scryfall that like some of the supplemental sets got included on accident when they did their little filter. So like Battle Bond was on there and something else.
Okay.
So you might have to watch out a little bit. But if something is obviously like has assist or something or partner, and you're like,
sure,
I don't know about that. Like if it's not legal in Modern, it's not legal in Pioneer for the at this point.
A couple quick shout outs. We're up to just about 120 people watching live right now. If you guys that are watching live can do me a quick favor, you can just hit that thumbs up button. This video, having a like from you while you're watching it, believe it or not, will help the video do well and live on and new viewers find it. It's one of the best things you can possibly do for us. So just hit the thumbs up button to get those evened out. And obviously, like and subscribe. Just hit the thumbs up button for us. I've got a chat here. Gamebox, is that Ben Bateman without a suit? It is. Sometimes it happens. Specifically, when you're recovering from back surgery, putting a lot of clothes on sucks.
Yeah.
Really hurts. So, things with laces that I have to bend down for. Yeah, I got boots I can slip on. Didn't really want to do a suit jacket. I've also been on a couch eating for 40 days. Haven't moved, so definitely gained a little weight. You know, just don't feel as good when you've gained weight. So there's the truth. Anyway, back to the episode.
So one notable thing. So 2014, the returning mechanic was slivers. So
okay, so there are a few slivers.
There are a few slivers. They're all the
Pioneer.
weird-looking predator ones.
Yeah. I mean, some of those are playable, but I don't know that that's enough to make slivers a deck with just that set. It wasn't even really a standard deck.
Yeah, now I do think there's some really interesting stuff that happens if you restrict a card pool the way they've done this. Because I think on a conceptual level, if you're like a newer Magic player, maybe you're newer to Modern, and you're trying to figure out why this happened, I do think that there's been a growing sentiment for a long time based on the reserve list and the existence of the reserve list. That as Legacy gets more and more expensive, and people get priced out of it, and we'll put Vintage and Old School into another block of expensive,
Sure.
but like these really old formats that play very, very expensive cards that are on the list that you can't reprint, the difference between Modern and Legacy, aside from those cards on the reserve list, gets smaller and smaller every time they decide to reprint one card, some expensive card that's not on the reserve list. So
Sure. Yeah.
it just happens more and more and more, right? The difference gets smaller and smaller. And especially when you get into stuff like Horizons, when stuff like, Force of Negation is getting printed, it's obviously not as good as Force of Will, but it starts to get closer and closer and tighter and tighter. So what eventually is going to happen is people are going to look at Modern, they're going to look at Legacy, and they're going to look at Vintage, and they're going to realize that Legacy almost doesn't have much of a draw anymore. It's just not going to really have a reason to exist for the most part. Like, aside, because there's very few cards other than the original dual lands that cannot be reprinted that are pillars of the format. Like, I think there's less than 20, less than 15 maybe.
Sure.
Candelabra, Eureka, a handful of cards like that are on the reserve list. But like,
sure, I mean, there's other stuff in Legacy that they're like extremely unlikely to print into Modern because they've kind of decided what the set's identity is or what the format's identity is going to be versus each other. In the same way that they banned the fetch lands from Pioneer because that is a big piece of the identity of Modern that they want to separate from Pioneer. In the same way, I don't think that they're ever going to print Force of Will or Wasteland or Brainstorm or Ancient Tomb or a lot of these pillars of Legacy. They're not going to print them into Modern because that would homogenize Modern and Legacy to the point where, like, why does Legacy exist?
Well, but I think that's the question they're asking, and that's, I think, a little bit of the reason this is happening, is because now they're realizing we've supported Modern openly. We've printed sets that have Modern in the set title now enough times and over enough years that we want players' Legacy format to just be Modern. That's what they want Modern to be. They want Modern to eventually become the format they've been supporting since 2011 that is Legacy. They don't have to worry about talking about these reserve list cards anymore. They don't have to defend the decision or talk about it. They can just sweep Legacy
I don't
under
think
the
that people
rug.
are ever just going to abandon Legacy for Modern. I mean, like, certainly if you're going to start playing an Eternal format, you're going to pick Modern over Legacy in the same way that a lot of people are now going to pick Pioneer over Modern because their cards do a little bit more not having to compete with as much older stuff. But I don't think that Legacy is going to go away. Like, for one thing, it's the format where you can play those cards I listed, as well as like some reserve list cards that are powerful. But it's also like the format where you can play all of the cards, and I think there's appeal to that as well.
Yeah, I think my point is less that it's a good thing that they're doing it, and more that it's I can see the ideology that would go with this, which is that if there's a small sliver of the world that still wants to play Legacy, have fun, enjoy playing Legacy, but it's not something that we can really worry about the distinction between Modern and Legacy anymore when talking about the future, because if the future is Arena, and Modern probably is never going to be on Arena, you're already dealing with so many years of cards, so much complexity, such a massive card pool, that like if Legacy, I think, gets caught in the crossfire, but and this is just my guess, by the way, this is not based on any conversation I've had. I think the ideology would be that like if Legacy becomes smaller and smaller, but Modern gets bigger and bigger, the difference is so small. Let's introduce Pioneer so people don't have to spend an arm and a leg at the end of the format, and give, again, like you said, 8 years later, a non-rotating format. I think it's like you just sort of see like the further and further down the line we get, the longer that Magic has existed, the more you have to give people an opportunity to understand what they're getting into, and it's overwhelming. People talk about like deck building, and it's overwhelming. There's going to be 20,000 new cards pretty soon.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you say that Arena is the future, but I think that this format being introduced and them not kind of like waiting for Historic to be interesting, because like in 2 years, Historic will probably be interesting. There'll be a couple of standard rotations. You can now be like, oh, I can go back and play those like crazy Dominaria cards that I played with a few years ago. Now there's combos starting to pop up in Historic, and it's like actually meaningfully different from Standard. They could have done that, but instead they decided to break it off at Return to Ravnica and create a new format just for paper. I mean, obviously you can play it on Magic Online, but I mean, at this point with Arena existing, Magic Online is never going to be a big focus for them. It's going to be something that is going to exist, but this format isn't for Magic Online. This is a format for paper. They're creating some paper Magic Fest for it in the first quarter. There's a paper Players Tour and a paper Players Tour Finals. There's going to be paper PTQs for it. There's going to be Magic Online PTQs as well, but this is a format that shows like Arena is not the only feature that Magic has and that paper is valuable. In fact, here's a new way to play with your paper cards.
Yeah, and it's an interesting format. I mean, I think we can all agree about that. It's I'm excited about it. Like there's a lot of cards that I've wanted to be able to play with that I thought are very cool printed in the last 8 years that get quickly outclassed because standard has to be standard.
Yeah.
And so you see when the power level of modern has gotten to where it is, but then again you also see stuff like how is it Phoenix not just going to be just a dominant deck in Pioneer?
How it's going to be
is it?
Well, it doesn't have Faithless Looting.
That's true.
Or Manamorphose.
Yeah, we're gonna get into this, but like, you know, a lot of the reasons that Izzet Phoenix is not particularly playable. Well, not that it's not playable. I think it's good, but one of the reasons that it's not going to be as dominant is the same reason it's not as dominant in Modern. Is that you are kind of lacking powerful 1-drop spells, particularly those that put Phoenix in your graveyard. So the deck is much slower. You got to play a lot of 2-drops. You can play Ops. You can play Haggles.
Was
What
2010?
other 1-drops do you have?
Was 20?
You can play Tome Scour. So that's the thing, is when you can play 4 Treasure Cruise in your deck,
Or Thought Scour, I guess.
you cannot play Thought Scour. It's from Dark Ascension.
Dark Ascension.
But you can play Tome Scour, and I've actually seen discussion of Tome Scour in Phoenix
Know yourself
builds.
5, yeah.
Yeah, Dredge is starting to play it in Modern actually, and like due to the banning of Faithless Looting, and like it might be playable in Phoenix because you get to play Treasure Cruise. So like you don't necessarily care about incurring card disadvantage with Tome Scour because it makes your Treasure Cruise basically just cost 1.
Okay.
You put 6 cards in your graveyard.
So before we jump into, I think that's a nice segue for us to talk about the non-ban list versus what's
So that's another
eventually-
interesting thing about this format.
Yeah, so they started the format out, and now I can see there's 130 of you guys watching. Thank you so much. This is awesome. It's cool. It's cool a few years later to have the YouTube channel up and running, where when we go live randomly, there's like lots of people that want to hear this. It's really exciting. And guys, if you're in the chat, I know we haven't been reading off too much, but we're going to start soon, so throw in your questions. Let us know what you want to hear. We've been live for how long, Marshall?
A few minutes.
A few minutes. Okay, solid. Been live for a bit.
30 minutes.
Okay, live for 30. So we'll probably talk for like another 15.
Did it say right there on your screen?
Yes, 26 minutes ago. Great. So we'll probably talk. Thank you, Michael. I'm not an idiot. We're going to talk for 15 more minutes, 20 more minutes, and then we'll do probably 15 minutes or so Q&A. So one of the things they introduced was that the only 5 cards banned are the Khans of Tarkir, Onslaught, Fetch lands.
And I don't think that's for power level. I mean, obviously it has power level implications on the set. Like we said, Treasure Cruise and other Delve cards are illegal. It makes those worse. Deathrite Shaman is legal. It makes Deathrite Shaman a lot worse. And there's other strategies that like are really leaning on fetch lands for their mana base or whatever. So it is a power level thing, but I think it's more about the identity of the format.
Deathrite Shaman's illegal. I just realized.
Deathrite Shaman's legal, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's more about the
It's a
identity
lot
of the
worse.
format.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
they wanted
yeah.
this format to be the format where you don't play fetch lands. And in part, that's for tournament concerns, but also I think it separates this format from Modern a lot because it changes the way you have to build your decks. But other than that, yeah, they left a lot of, like, very obviously busted stuff on the legal. Saheeli Felidar combo is legal, which got banned from Standard. Emrakul the Promised End is legal, along with Aetherworks
Aetherworks
Marvel, which
Marvel,
got banned from
Smuggler's
Standard.
Copter.
Smuggler's Copter, Reflector Mage, Rampaging Ferocidon,
Ramanap Ruins, anyone?
Ramanop Ruins. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cards that...
Azeret.
Yeah, well, Hazards didn't get banned from Standard, though. But there's a lot of
Scarab
cards...
God, was he banned? Did that happen? No, it's powerful.
No, it was just like a pillar of the format until it rotated finally, and everybody suffered through it.
And hey, Teferi and Oko will be legal, and they're crushing all the formats.
Yeah,
So-
Field of the Dead is legal with Golos and Scapeshift and everything else.
And Karn the Great Creator, although thankfully, neither the
Michael
liquid metal
Gladys.
coating or
Yeah.
Michael Gladys.
Yeah, so that's a good thing.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of these cards that are like obviously so powerful to have gotten banned from Standard, or cards that are banned in Modern and Legacy, like Dig Through Time, Treasure Cruise, Deathrite Shaman. A lot of these cards are just like obviously very powerful and have gotten banned in their respective Standard formats.
Right.
And they decided not to ban any of them. So what they did when they created Modern was there was an older format called Extended, which was like just like 8-year standard or something. It was just like a really long standard that rotated. They looked at what extended was like immediately before they introduced modern, and for a few years before, basically extended starting with 8th edition forward.
Yeah.
And they kind of were like, what were dominant decks in extended? We're going to ban those cards because we don't want this to just be extended too. We want modern to have its own identity. And so they banned things like Sword of the Meek, Artifact Lands, Golgari Grave Troll. Yeah, they just like kind of started out the ban list with cards that they knew. Dark Depths.
Wasn't that banned?
Bitter Blossom because of fairies and extended,
Yeah.
Dark Depths. But a lot of the cards like Bitter Blossom and Stoneforge Mystic and
Ancestral Vision.
Yeah, some of those cards, and admittedly, like, had they been in the format at the beginning when the power level was a little bit lower, maybe they would have been a bigger deal. But it just seemed like they might have overbanned a little bit, especially on cards like Bitter Blossom and Ancestral Vision, where it's like,
right.
They barely made a splash,
Absolutely.
So this time, what they're doing is they're doing all their playtesting to see what needs to be banned on Magic Online, because they know that Magic Online is going to put in so many more reps than they ever could within their office, and they're going to be able to look at the Magic Online data and make some informed decisions about bans. And multiple WotC staff have come out and said, that's what we're doing. We're going to be banning very aggressively. We're not going to be banning our regular ban cycles. We're going to be watching the format very closely, what data is popping up, and we're going to just start banning stuff. But they let us have a clean slate to start out. And I think even though it is a little bit scary to invest in these cards right now, the format's not nearly as expensive as Modern, because every set that's in it has a very high print run. I think Return to Ravnica, so working at a shop, I started noticing Return to Ravnica was the first set where boxes stayed cheap.
I remember speculators at the time. There
Yes.
was a ton of conversations at the time about the last 10 years of sealed product has all skyrocketed, so why not just invest? And I think people
Yes.
did. They started to.
Yes.
And the print runs got insane, and sets like Return to Ravnica and Cons got so overprinted, those boxes still haven't moved.
Yeah, you can get those boxes for about $100.
Yeah.
But look at an Innistrad box. Look at a Scars of Mirrodin box.
Time Spiral.
Oh my.
Yeah, well,
goodness.
I'm just going back 1 year at a time. But yeah, if you look at a new Phyrexia box or a Scars of Mirrodin box,
it's
those are like a year, 2 years before this format's inception, and they're insanely expensive. But if you look at a Return to Ravnica box, a Theros box, a Khans of Tarkir box, those are dirt cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Battle for Zendikar.
And all
So a lot of these have modern
all their
staples.
rares are sub $1, sub 50 cents, except for
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this format is much
yeah.
cheaper. Stuff is spiking right now because stores don't have a lot of stock. People are just letting these cards sit in their binder. There are people sitting on 10 Jeskai Ascendancies because it's worth nothing. Well, if Jeskai Ascendancy Emery ends up being a big deck, or at Jeskai Ascendancy Sylvian Caryatid, it's going to go up, but then people are going to offload them out of their binder because there's so many of these sets out there.
right.
But I think the format is a lot cheaper. But I do think it's a little bit scary to invest because of these bans are looming. But it also means that nothing that doesn't deserve to get banned is going to get banned. We're going to get to see the whole format with all its Aetherworks Marvels, with all its Saheeli Felidars, with all of its, Treasure Cruise, Arclight Phoenix decks, all of its Wilderness Reclamation, Dig Through Time, Nexus of Fate decks. We're going to get to see all of it. And then some of it is going to make it and some of it's not.
Yeah, so I think one of the questions here, I see a few people. I see Bobby Mayo asks this question. I thought I saw another one here asking the exact same thing. What are the 5 cards we expect to get banned first? I think you just named 2 of them right off the bat. I imagine Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time would be close to the top of the list for me.
I think Treasure Cruise is pretty easy. It's really good in proactive decks. It doesn't require a heavy commitment to blue. Dig Through Time is more of a reactive card and combo if you're trying to find specific pieces. So I think it depends on if decks are abusing it. If you guys will remember when they got printed, they both got banned in Modern pretty quickly, easy. But Dig Through Time stuck around in Legacy for about a year.
Yeah.
Because they knew that there's more reactive decks using it that aren't obviously just powering through cards and lightning bolting your face until you die. Also, they're obviously not as powerful. Neither of them are as powerful in this format, obviously, because of no fetch lands and a big lack of one drop, good 1-drop instant sorceries in general. We have no lightning bolt. We have no Path to Exile. No
Inquisition. You
no Serum Visions.
Yeah.
You have Thoughtseize. No Inquisition.
Yeah.
Which means you're stocking your graveyard much slower unless you're trying really hard using stuff like Tome Scour, Cathartic Reunion, which the Phoenix decks will be using. So I think decks that can reliably fill their graveyard to their own benefit and then can Treasure Cruise, I think those decks are going to be the ones to watch out for. But is Phoenix really as interested in Dig Through Time? I feel
No, that feels with how hard you have to work to get the cards in your graveyard in the first place. and it's also only netting you 2 cards additionally instead of the 3 cards, and it's 2 mana at
like
cheapest.
Dig Through Time is definitely a watch list card, don't get me wrong, because
Yeah.
it's extremely powerful. It did end up getting banned from Legacy, and it is banned in Modern. But with no fetch lands, like, I think Treasure Cruise is obviously more powerful, and we'll see how it goes.
I think anybody who's ever played with a standard or a limited set can attest to like the difference between Evolving Wilds and a fetch land is very stark.
Well, Fabled Passage is the go-to fetch land now, right?
Fabled. Oh, that's
That's
the
an Eldraine
That's
card.
the current one. Yeah. Just a reminder to everybody. If I sound like a moron, it's because I went down 40 days ago. I've been on my back on tons of painkillers. Haven't been able to sit or play Magic and had back surgery. So I do own some Throne of Eldraine cards. I did get to watch the set review, and I do know what the cards are, but. Just like generally speaking, my brain's been mush. So just back.
No worries. Fabled Passage, and I do see card decks playing Fabled Passage both to enable Delve and also in Pioneer. I've been looking at a lot of deck lists. Tons of people are like posting their ideas, and it's kind of giving me a feel for what the format is probably going to look like when people are actually playing it. And yeah, people are playing Fabled Passage to enable Delve, but also to enable Revolt on your Fatal Push.
Yeah, right.
Because that's something that people take for granted in Modern, is they're like, oh, Fatal Push is basically just pass the exile, but they don't get a land. Well, that's because all the creatures are cheap, because there's so many powerful cheap creatures in Modern,
right?
Which there are fewer in Pioneer, and people might end up playing Scarab God or whatever.
Yep.
And also, you can kill basically anything with it, because you can always hold back a fetch to fetch and enable Revolt on your Fatal Push. And you're not doing that in Pioneer, and Fatal Push gets a lot worse. You can't get rid of Felidar Guardian with it, which I think is going to be very important.
Yeah. So you're looking at Fatal Push behind you. I'm looking one past Fatal Push, and I'm looking at that Claim Fame right there on the wall. It looks real sweet. Real sweet. I always wanted to make that card good in a competitive format, and I actually think this is maybe the format to do it.
Perhaps so.
I mean,
you got a brew already, or are you just spitballing?
Spitballing, and it's kind of in line actually with some of the ideas that I have of that card in the past. I just think it has a little bit more rope. We don't just have Unearth in the format now.
I would really like to see you brew some Claim Fame lists and post them in the Patreon Discord channel.
I'm sure you would like. I would like that too. I should be in there. I will.
Dreadhorde Arcanist. If Claim Fame Dreadhorde Arcanist is going to happen, it's much more likely to happen in Pioneer than Modern.
And that is a 1-mana spell. It stocks your graveyard. It cares about there being cards in your graveyard. So.
And when you famed the Dreadhorde Arcanist, he can cast your.
Trust me, I know.
Skewer the Critics and stuff.
I know this whole move. I've thought a lot about this move. I have many lists that include that interaction. So Marshall wants to say something here.
No, I was just saying that we were having that earlier discussion about. I can't really remember like what's in M13 versus M14 and that sort of thing. So I real quickly looked through all the core sets to try and see what sort of things, and it is very stark how watered down a lot of those core sets felt. Magic Origins,
Lightning Bolt,
we did
preordained core sets.
Yeah. So, like, the most notable things that I came across were Young Pyro is legal in Pioneer.
Jace, Flip Jace.
Flip Jace is. Elvish Mystic and Llanowar Elves are both legal.
Yeah, that's strong.
Glade Cover Scout is legal, but the other Bogles aren't.
Birds of Paradise must be legal, right?
No.
Really?
The last time it was printed was an OG Rav.
They didn't reprint it in any of the core sets, like
No. So if you're like a multicolor deck looking for a 1-mana
Gilded Goose,
fixer, it's Gilded Goose.
Card's sweet.
So speaking of cards that are going to be banned, I think Treasure Cruise definitely, Dig Through Time probably. I think Saheeli Rai Felidar Guardian combo is a big one. That being like the infinite combo that does see play in Modern, where you are using Saheeli. And those decks are often playing Gilded Goose because you're playing 3 or 4 colors. Since Saheeli and Felidar are 3 colors worth of cards by themselves, and then a lot of the time they are looking for green to help them find their combo with Once Upon a Time or Oath of Nissa or
you mentioned it already, but the hexproof 03 2-mana
Sylvan
Caryatid, that'd be the other one.
Yeah, so and also like the Saheeli decks I've seen are also often playing Oko, because you can get rid of like a Pithing Needle, or you can get rid of something that's stopping you from comboing with an Oko, and he's just a good card that synergizes with Goose. So I think one of those cards, Saheeli or Felidar, is going to get banned. I think it would be more interesting if Saheeli got banned, since Felidar is kind of a more broadly interesting card in like ETB trigger creature decks.
Right.
And like even blinking your Teferi for a little extra bounce is a little spicy with 3-mana Teferi. But yeah, so I hope that it's Saheeli that gets the axe this time, but I think one of those cards is probably going to have to go.
I'd so much rather see Cat get banned.
It seems like just too fast of a combo for this format, especially with 1-mana accelerants.
So, couple quick points that I want to throw in here. We've got a few people in the chat here. I see Ken Yordome. That's Jeff Roberts, longtime listener to the show, one of the big supporters here. Good chances Marvel is too difficult to interact with to stay. Corset 2010 was the last printing of Birds, if I recall correctly, says Mark Mason. Federico Trezzi, Bird last print was 10th edition, not Ravnik. I think you actually mean M10. So first off, before I get to the next point here, guys, we're now up to 165 of you watching, but we have 64 likes. If every single person watching right now would hit the thumbs up button, we would have 164 thumbs ups.
It's a great way for you
called out the audience.
It's a great way for you to help the show and the channel for free.
It costs nothing. It's literally the most helpful thing you can do to see this video get seen. I would appreciate it so much if you all would do it. But what I wanted to get to, actually, was we got to this a second ago with the one-mana spells you were talking about. So speaking about each sort of thing you do that's like a hallmark of Magic gameplay, I want to talk about the best version of each one that we are currently playing with in Pioneer, because I think that's a really interesting conversation. You mentioned already Hand Disruption. We don't get Inquisition of Kozilek, but we do get Thoughtseize, which is the premier spell. So we have the best Hand Disruption spell ever printed. I mean, one-mana Hand Disruption spell ever printed, available in this format. That's a powerful place to start. Thoughtseize has been to catch all forever.
Yep.
It was printed in Theros, so we do get that.
Takes their Felidar Guardian, Aetherworks Marvel, whatever combo, as well as their Treasure Cruise, or it gets anything.
Right. Secondly, what's the best one-mana burn spell, or just the best cheap burn spell? Period. Magma Jet got reprinted in Theros, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think the best one
Right.
is just Wild Slash because it's 1 mana.
But
I think a lot of the red
creatures,
decks. No, Wild Slash is Shock with upside.
Oh, sure. It's that the Ferocious Shock?
Yeah.
The one-mana Ferocious Shock,
It's not a big upside, but it's like, why play Shock when you could be playing Wild Slash? I think Wild Slash and Shock are going to see a lot of play. Maybe Lightning Strike.
Maybe
but
Skewer.
It's because, Skewer probably as well. I think that those triggering prowess, I think the red decks are going to be leaning on Monastery Swiftspear and Soulscar Mage a lot more in this.
Eidolon.
And Eidolon the Great Rebel, obviously, that's one of the better burn cards that's in the format. But I think as they're 1-drops, because as a burn deck you need 1-drops, you really need 1-drops.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I think with no Goblin Guide, and especially all of the 1-drop burn spells being gone pretty much. I mean, you have no Lava Spike, no Lightning Bolt, no Rift Bolt. You don't even have Shard Volley. So you don't have any 1-mana 3 damages except for Wizard's Lightning if you're playing Wizards, which you gotta get a little creative because Monastery Swiftspear and Young Pyromancer are both not Wizards.
Yep.
And Soulscar Mage is a Wizard though, but you're gonna need more than just Soulscar Mage. So Wizard's Lightning, and then you have Skewer the Critics, but that doesn't trigger Prowess. So if you're leaning on these 1-drop Prowess creatures, you still play Skewer, but it's a little awkward because you have to play it post-combat. You're not getting the 4 damage burn spell.
Right.
So at that point, Shock is a 4-mana burn spell, or 4 damage burn spell or a 3. Because you're getting in for 1 with your Monastery Swiftspear off the Prowess and the 2 damage to the face.
Yeah, right.
And if you have 2 Monastery Swiftspears or a Monastery Swiftspear and a Soulscar Mage,
Yeah.
now you're getting in for actual 4 with the Shock, where that Skewer would have only been 3.
Feels like Shock is the most likely of those to me. It just seems like the simplest and the easiest to fit into those decks. That's
That and Wild Slash being basically identical.
Yeah. So then I would think, okay, if that's the best burn spell, what about something like just if you're talking about a mono red deck that's just trying to ditch lands to get more spells? What about something like a Magmatic Insight? Was that 1 mana just card a land?
Yeah, so I've seen some of that in Treasure Cruise decks because you want to stock your graveyard and you want to be playing cheap spells to flip your thing in the ice or bring back your Phoenix or something to flash back with your Dreadhorde Arcanist, and I've seen some Magmatic Insight there. I think in burn decks you would rather not spend your mana spinning your wheels.
Makes sense. Yeah, it's just a little slow.
So one thing that's interesting actually about the format that I think is not easy to pick up at first glance, but I've looked at a lot of deck lists, and it's actually much easier, especially if you want to be a fast deck, to play enemy color pairs versus allied color pairs, because we don't have full cycles of lands in Pioneer. So for fast lands, so let's say you're a burn deck, you want to go fast, right? You might look at burn decks that have been good in previous standards and then look to augment them, because the modern burn deck is just losing so much.
So you get to play Inspiring Vantage and
right. So you might look at Atarka Red, which was a big deck used to become immense in Temur Battle Rage, and Atarka's Command to go wide with Goblin tokens, and then use Atarka's Command to put pressure on that axis. If your opponent is tapped out, you can go for this one-hit kill combo. Now you get to play that deck with all these incredibly powerful cards, Monastery, you got to play Monastery Swiftspear, but you can play Young Pyromancer to go wide, you can play Eidolon the Great Revel, you can play Skewer the Critics, you get a lot of options.
Zergo Bell Striker.
Yeah.
Well, you could play that in that deck as well, but I actually played that deck at a GP and hated it because I don't like playing burn decks. But
Yeah, never burned
somebody
it.
told me it was what I should play, having no experience with the format, and I wanted to go to the GP, and I got screwed. But anyway, the reason that deck is like oddly much worse is because the mana is atrocious. You get to play 4 Stomping Ground. You can play 4 Rootbound Crag, which is a little awkward because you're light on lands. If you have an opening hand that's like 2 Rootbound Crag and nothing else, that's unkeepable.
Or you're like Mole to 6 that's got 1 land that's a Rootbound Crag. And
Yeah,
it's
it's
gross.
terrible. And so like you can play Game Trail, for example,
they're
which
green,
is
red.
like the same situation as Rootbound Crag, where if you have a hand with 2 Game Trails or a Game Trail and Rootbound Crag, you're really sad.
You're screwed, yeah.
And so
And what about
so you don't get to
pain
play.
lands?
You don't get to play the allied pain lands. There are no allied pain lands.
Yeah, that's the really interesting thing is that
Carcosan
because
Forest is not legal, and Copperline Gorge is not legal.
Yeah, because
but
those
now
are-
if you're playing Boros, for like Boros Charm and maybe some red-white creatures, I've seen some really interesting looking Knights lists that are playing the new red-white
Spiraling
Night
Veteran.
Lord, and some Night 1-drops. Those decks get to play 4 Inspiring Vantage, 4 Battlefield Forge, 4 Sacred Foundry.
Yeah,
So
that's
their
really
mana
cool.
is insane.
Yeah,
They're basically a modern deck at that point. I mean, might as well be playing fetches and shocks.
And Mana Confluence also seems like a
Yeah, you can play
Yeah.
Mana Confluence in the
Yeah.
Atarka Red deck for sure, but it's definitely worse than a lot of your other options, especially if you're playing an enemy card.
And if you're trying to max out your mana, then like tapping each turn with that. I mean, again, it's like your life total is interesting in this format in a different way because without fetches and shocks, you're not going to be starting at 17 every single game, which is like what so many decks in Modern
you also
do.
can't fetch for basics. So sometimes, like especially
True.
if you're a 3-color deck, you're going to be like Watery Grave untapped to Thoughtseize, and then you're going to be like Breeding Pool untapped to play my Sylvan Caryatid, and then you're going to be like another Breeding Pool untapped to play my 4-drop or whatever, right? To play my
Yeah.
I don't know what a 4-drop in this Sultai deck that I just made up is. But, more of your lands are shock lands. Whereas in Modern, you're only playing like 3 shock lands in your deck or 4 shock lands in your deck. And so
Yeah.
you're like, turn 1, fetch for basic swamp to Thoughtseize you, because turn 2, I can fetch for Breeding Pool untapped and play Caryatid. And so you're like kind of taking less damage, but kind of taking more damage because you have to lean on these shocks so much harder.
So then if you don't have breeding, if you don't have, so we talked about burn, hand disruption. What about counterspells? What's the counterspell you
They're
play?
terrible. There's no
I was
good 2
I was literally trying to think about it, and I was like, all those crappy 2-mana ones that came from like Theros and like those sets where it's like equal your devotion or like we have Quench. You can play
You
bad
play Quench.
Rune Snag. you can
You
play.
can play Quench.
You could play
The problem
Quench.
with Quench is I think that like in controlling decks, 2 mana is just too easy for your opponent to pay if you're
Yeah.
planning for the game to go long. In the same way that like Mana Leak is almost not good in Modern,
Right,
it
right.
is good enough that you'll play 1 or 2, but it can't really be the main counterspell you lean on a lot of the time. You're playing like Logic Knot or something like that. I will say Drown in the Lock is interesting.
Yeah, Drown the Lock.
Your opponent doesn't stock their graveyard as much, but it is a 2-mana counterspell that like can get the job done against a lot of these combo decks that are like
Yeah.
churning through cards.
I agree. Hey, Marshall, I think I'm seeing on the iPad here that's in front of us, it says low battery. I just want to make sure that it's plugged in so we don't lose the stream midstream.
It
Just
should
make sure.
be.
Am I correct, or is that something else? My eyesight's not. That's
It said low battery.
So yeah, counterspell. That's like that seems. What about the one from? What about the one from Dragons or Concept here? That if you had a dragon, you could reveal.
Silumgar Scorn is legal. I think Esper Dragons with Ojutai and Silumgar
Seems
come
like
back.
It seems like a thing. Somebody in here just said Ojutai's Command.
It's 4 mana. Yeah, it does an okay cryptic command impression.
I do love Ojutai's Command. That's like one of my favorites.
So I think that, especially with Delve spells still legal in the format,
Yeah.
namely Treasure Cruise and Dictator Time, but also Gurmag Angler and Tassiger, I think that Jace Vryn's Prodigy is going to be really important in the format.
Card
And
is really
Ojutai's
powerful.
command can bring back Jace Vryn's Prodigy.
Yeah, I agree.
Excuse me. Especially with no Snapcaster and like Thoughtseize being the best form of like cheap disruption as opposed to counterspells, because Jace Vryn's Prodigy doesn't play that well with counterspells, especially compared to Snapcaster, because he can't do anything instant speed. So if you're playing a bunch of counterspells, you have a bunch of counterspells in your graveyard, you flip your Jace Vryn's Prodigy, doesn't really do anything.
He's a far more. Yeah, he's a far
So he's
more.
better at flashing back a Thoughtseize.
He's a proactive card. He's not a reactive
Yes,
card.
or a Fatal Push or something. And he stocks your graveyard so you can Treasure Cruise. He also is a cheap source of card advantage. He also is a legendary creature, which I think that there is going to be a Kethis deck in this format, similar to the standard deck that we recently saw with Moth Ambers and stuff. You get to play Emery, and he's a legendary creature that stocks your graveyard, so I think he's relevant on that axis as well. I think Jace Fringe Prodigy is going to be big. And then if you are not looking to play a creature, if you don't care that Jace is a creature, you can also play Search for Azcanta. It does a very good Jace Fringe Prodigy impression.
Yeah.
At stalking your graveyard, but it's like more, passive, but also doesn't draw removal as well.
So, all right, guys, we're at 50 minutes here. I want to take Q&A for the next 10 to 15 minutes. We haven't done one of these in a while, so I would say just kind of ask anything that you guys want to ask about the format, about the podcast moving forward, the brand, whatever you want. We don't traditionally do it here, really. I mentioned it early in the show. Super Chat is something you can do on YouTube where you're basically donating. There's a little dollar button here you can see down at the bottom of the chat. If you have a question that you definitely want answered, it'll highlight it in a color, so we'll see it over the other comments. But we're going to try to just read a bunch of comments here.
We're going to answer a bunch of questions, but if you want a 100% chance of your question getting answered,
it's a really great way to support the show, and it's one of the major ways to kind of grow your ability to invest in your show, which currently we don't do a lot of, so it's very helpful if you want to do that.
Patreon.
Yeah, Patreon's the other one. And the last time I asked this, we got 50 more likes on the video, so one more time I'm just going to plug it, guys. We've got 173 watching. There are 116 thumbs ups. Can we just get to 173? What do you think? What are the chances? We would love you guys if you wanted to do it. All right, please hit the thumbs up button. I'll love you guys forever. Let's get into these questions and see what people want to know. All right, somebody asks, Nico asks, Field of Ruin as a fetch for basics. The card is sweet. Obviously, we've seen a tremendous amount of Field of Ruin played in Modern and in Standard. It's a powerful card. It's a really good card.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, it's not as necessary because there's no Tron, there's no there's no Amulet Titan or any of these decks that are really leaning on lands. It will hose Field the Dead.
If those exist, they're definitely. I mean, come on, in Standard, it just got banned last week.
Well, yes, this format is going to be more powerful than Standard, but yes, I think that there will be some kind of Golos ramp, Field of the Dead, Scape Shift situation going on. I also think Green Devotion is going to be a big player, especially because of the existence of 8 1-mana elves.
Sure.
But I guess Field of Ruin isn't super good against them. But yeah, Field of Ruin is going to be good. It's also good for it's good for triggering Revolt. It's good for in a 3-color deck, a little bit of fixing, but it also does tap for colorless, so you don't want to play too many. It's good for triggering landfall on your Tireless Tracker.
Yeah, Tracker's going to be a big card. That card's gotten bigger in Modern too recently.
It's worse with no fetches.
Yeah,
but it is going to be a big player. I think that Black-Green Rock is such an easy starting point for the format because you have Thoughtseize and Fatal Push as 1-mana interaction, and no other color just basically gets to keep their Modern 1-mana interaction suite as Black does.
It's true, and their mana's really good.
And it feels like also they get to pick up a lot of cards which are going to shine more in this limited card pool. Their Abrupt Decays get better.
Yes.
And
Yes, yeah, they get to keep Abrupt Decay, Thoughtseize, Fatal Push, which I don't think any other color combo gets to keep their Disruption suite intact like that. I mean, they lose Inquisition of Kozilek, but fine.
And they're enemies, so they get Land War Waste and Blooming Marsh.
That's what you're saying.
Well,
the mana's really good.
I think more importantly, even than those two cards, they also get access to Hissing Quagmire because the enemy creature lands are also in Pioneer, and we do not get the allied creature lands.
So you don't get a Raging Ravine, but you do get a Hissing Quagmire.
Correct. So you don't need Jund is playing red for Blood Red Elf, Lightning Bolt, Raging Ravine. Well, whatever.
Yeah, right.
Who wants those? So I've actually seen a lot of Sultai lists online because you get access to Oko, and maybe your a little bit of Delve perhaps. You get access to Thought Erasure as your kind of Inquisition 5th and 6th Thoughtseize slot.
I mean, prior to War of the Spark and Horizons, you had seen a lot of just good black-green decks. Obviously things changed a little bit when you started to get introduced to all these new powerful cards and color combinations. I mean, Sultai was just not a thing at all in Modern until recently, but for a long time, those black-green decks that would lean on several Ghost Quarters and they were just very consistent were really good. Yeah. And you can probably see a version of that deck existing in this
Totally.
format.
You lose Tarmogoyf, but you get Grim Flare.
Yeah.
You also have Deathrite Shaman. I think it'll be very interesting to see where Deathrite Shaman shakes out in the format. It's obviously not a 1-mana mana dork that just immediately ramps you on the first turn of the game the way it was in other formats. So it's kind of more of a slow role player, the way that people say that Deathrite Shaman is the best Planeswalker ever printed.
Right.
It does that more, where it generates advantage over a long game and also disrupts your opponent if they're playing Treasure Cruise. You're just eating a card out of their graveyard every turn to put them off Treasure Cruise.
Yeah.
You can make their Jace Fringe Prodigy much worse by eating that stuff. I think that there's going to be a very powerful Dredge deck, not including the Kethis deck that I think is going to be good, and definitely an Emery deck that may or may not include Kethis is going to be very good. But I also think that there's a dredge deck with like prized amalgam. The best list I saw was actually playing or in my opinion, was playing the let me see if I can bring up the list.
Well, you pull that up. I want to make sure we get to a handful of these, so I'm just gonna throw a few out there we can do quick answers on.
Yeah, for sure.
Any chance History of Benalia is playable? I think that card's extremely powerful. I think definitely there's gonna probably be a Knights deck. That seems like a thing.
Yeah, with the Eldraine Knights and History of Benalia.
I think it's really good. That was asked by...
And red-white is an easy color combo to play.
Jason B asked that one. All right, so let's ask some others. Is I have Hugin legal? It is most certainly not, asks Philip Holman. We have Tabletop Gamer 99 because WotC won't do that. Oh, no, that's a response to someone else. Let's see here.
Someone asked, do you think Coco Goblins could be a thing between Grumgully, Warchief, some of the others like...
So I do think that
Scar
Goblins is going to be a
Prospector.
good deck. We have access to Goblin Ringleader, Goblin Warchief, Scar Prospector, Goblin Rabblemaster,
Legion...
Legion War Boss if you're interested in that. We do have Legion Loyalist. We have like Reckless Bushwhacker.
Didn't Goblin Grenade
No
get reprinted
Krenko.
in like one of the
It's like
later...
a 12. There's no Goblin.
New
Really?
Krenko. There's new
Okay.
Krenko. but
There is
no.
new Krenko. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a good number of goblins for a goblin shell, but again, I think an aggro deck that's red-green is just a little rough on the mana, and I don't know if Coco and Grumgully are going to be worth it, especially with Goblin Ringleader in the format. Goblin Ringleader is, like, better than Collected Company. It's,
Very
like,
powerful, yeah.
one of the better card draw spells that gets played, like, in Legacy on, like, raw cards. Obviously, they play it on turn 1 with Goblin Lackey, so it's a little busted there. Or
So we have... that is the phone alert of Michael's phone. It is Zelda. All right, other things to ask here. Let's see here.
Oh, so this dredge deck. So you got like Satyr Wayfinder, Stitcher Supplier to stock the graveyard, and Emery, and then you have like Prized Amalgam, Creeping Chill, Haunted Dead, and then to bring back the Prized Amalgam, you've got Cauldron Familiar, Witch's Oven, which you can cast the Witch's Oven into your graveyard with Emery. You've got Scrap Heap Scrounger, which you can also cast with Emery, or it just brings itself back for Prized Amalgam. Haunted Dead brings itself back. You have Desecrated Tomb, which is the artifact. Whenever a creature leaves your graveyard, you make a 1/1.
Sweet.
You can cast that out of your graveyard with Emery. With Scrap Heap Scrounger, you exile a creature card and bring it back. You get 2 bats.
Wow.
And then with the Cauldron Cat, you're just getting a bat every turn.
That's really powerful, yeah.
Yeah, and Prized Amalgam gets you a bat. Haunted Dead gets you an extra bat.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
I think this is like one of the sweeter lists that I've seen. So I do think that there's going to be a dredge deck. Maybe it's not as cute as Desecrated Tomb, but I think there's going to be a dredge deck for sure, and Deathright's going to hate on that as well. So I do think it's a good long-term card advantage engine, and it'll be interesting to see how good exactly it is at that.
I see a Tuka Ekonen asks, with no Snapcaster, maybe Mission Briefing has a chance to show up somewhere. I definitely think so.
I agree.
Card's really good. That card was really good, but like the second you first ever played it, even like a pre-release, it was good. So I think it's an instant. It's blue.
I agree with that.
2.
I will say that like the instants you have access to flashback are worse, which is one thing that like makes it worse. Where like Snapcaster, you have like a lot of cheap interaction to flashback in this format, a little bit less. But I think that like people are going to be looking to flashback stuff in instant speed. I think Mission Briefing has a chance for sure.
I think Mission Briefing probably the Phoenix deck we talked about that's a real thing.
Maybe.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
think
so
They're generally looking for sorcery speed stuff. I think like Finale of Promise.
I mean, but even that it costs 2. You can put 2 cards into your graveyard
It's true.
with it. It's an instant, so counts as a spell. It'll feel, in theory, the treasure because you're playing alongside it.
Yeah, that's true. Surveil. Just put the 2 cards in my graveyard, no matter what they are.
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
it's pretty good actually. Yeah, I think Mission
flashback
Briefing
the
is.
treasure cruise you put into your graveyard with it.
I think Mission Briefing has a lot of potential, especially with Dig and Cruise in the format.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about if a Demeter control deck that is based a lot around Surveil, like the disinformation campaign decks that were a thing, because you get to now combine Surveil with Delve, and they obviously feed on one another, plus Drown in the Lock, and so it just seems like, and then you also get to combine with the Fatal Push and Thoughtseize on one. So
Yeah,
it feels
maybe
like
so.
they have
I
a
mean,
lot
Drown in the Lock definitely gets better when you're playing Fatal Push and Thoughtseize because you start putting stuff in your opponent's graveyard starting from turn 1.
Right.
So
Right, I agree totally. Let's see here. Alessandro Rosales says, how fast do you think this format will be? Will it be a turn 5 plus? It's interesting. Alex Kessler, the co-host, creator of this show, was tweeting yesterday about this, and he was saying, here's a list of some of the pound for pound most powerful 5 drops in the format. I think anticipating that it will be probably a turn slower than Modern was intended to be. It's not a turn 4 format at all anymore.
Well, at its base, like the Saheeli Felidar combo goes off on turn 3 or 4, more consistently turn 4. You got like Aetherworks Marvel basically destroying 2 of your lands with Ulamog or taking your turn with Emrakul on turn 4. I think right now with the ban list as is, like Burn is looking very strong, and like blue-red Treasure Cruise decks I think are looking very strong either with or without Phoenix. I think right now it's kind of looking to me like a turn 4 or 5 format. I think there will be bans.
I think so too.
Most of the cards I just mentioned I think are getting banned. I think Treasure Cruise is getting banned. I think either Saheeli or Felidar is getting banned. And I think we didn't really touch on Aetherworks Marvel, but I think it's probably getting banned.
Well, that's like, Aetherworks Marvel is interesting because it was so powerful in Standard, it's powerful enough that even just the exact in-block synergies with energy provided it needed to be banned. What kind of support, because it's obviously not in energy cards because they only existed in that one time period, but what kind of support beyond that set do you get to push the power level of that deck high enough?
I think it's like accelerance and consistency.
Yeah, okay.
Like
so
all the energy cards are the same, but you get to play with like Gilded Goose Oko base, or maybe you're playing with like Sylvan Caryatid because you need to hit it on turn 4 and you value the hexproof. Paradise Druid is another hexproof 2-mana creature that makes mana. I mean, you get to play like Once Upon a Time to help kind of like smooth out your draws. It can't find the Marvel, but it can find a Dork. It can find the lands you need to cast stuff because you're probably playing. Well, in Standard they were playing Teamer. They're probably still playing blue-green at least.
Here's a question I have for you. So I saw with the results from the Mythic Championship, Once Upon a Time was pretty good. People played a lot of that card, and I think we all knew, like,
Forest was the most played card at Mythic Championship, so...
a lot of Oko, a lot of Once Upon a Time. But I was thinking with Once Upon a Time, like, it's a novelty, and in testing obviously shows it's nice to be able to play, like, the free spell early. But is that something where, like, once people get used to playing with it, you think the format would maybe warp around it and make it less good? Or do you think it's just pound for pound going to be good, period, forever?
I think it's pound for pound going to be good forever. Especially in this format where you don't have as much 1-mana card selection. Like, you don't have Serum Visions, you don't have Ancient Stirrings. So I think just, like, being able to smooth out your draws in that way on turn 1 and also play a 1-drop is just so powerful. And honestly, I think it's going to see more play in Pioneer because of the absence of, like, Ancient Stirrings and Serum Visions than it would even in Modern.
Alright, so guys, we've been live for an hour, so we're going to do, I think, 5 more minutes of questions here. I'm really sorry if you posted a question we didn't get to. We're trying to hit as many as we can.
I'm very long-winded. I apologize, question askers.
Yeah, no worries there. Ryan Welker asks, let's see here. Oh, I see a super chat just popped up here. It says, Bobby Mayo asks, can you mention the price points for the sets in this format again?
Well, it's changed because of the announcement.
Yeah.
But before this format, a lot of the boxes of these sets were around $100. I used to work at a shop. We would run flashback drafts of like Return to Ravnica, Khans of Tarkir, and it was like $100 for a box.
Yeah, and I think that's. I mean, things will spike for sure, but they're not going to spike that much. There's not enough stuff that's legal in this format right now that's crazy expensive that you can expect the format to like really jump. Like a lot of
you're not going to see like $100 Mox Opals, $100 Scalding Tarns,
no, because a lot of stuff
$100 Lilies, Snapcasters. Like there's
all your fetch lands are gone, right? So that's right there. That knocks a huge chunk of the percentage of the cost of Modern right off the top. Then you start mentioning those other cards: Lily, Snapcaster, Mox Opal,
Tarmogoyf,
Karn, Tarmogoyf. Like these are all cards that are like $100 to $200 in some cases. None of those are legal. So
no Tron. I just remember there's no Tron in this format.
No Tron. Green Devotion is the Tron though.
Yeah.
So Nykthos.
Nykthos
maybe he's gonna spike.
Oh, you're gonna have to hit that with your Field of Ruin for sure. I think Nykthos is like
the real deck.
Is really strong in the format. I don't know if it's ban worthy. It remains to be seen. But some of the Green Devotion lists are looking nasty. Just put Ulamogs on.
How about Mono Black Devotion? What do you think of that? Pack Rat?
Well, I think especially.
I think with the Thoughtseize Fatal Push base, you might be able to make it work. You get access to Ayara.
You get to play
Queen of Lochthwain.
I forgot you get to play.
And you can play some Sir Conrad. So there's like some Sir Conrad lists I've seen for
I like Sir Conrad. I hope that's
like
playable.
what sort of self-milling that you can actualize and then make your own graveyard.
See another super chat here from Benoit Gagnon with the $2 super chat. I really appreciate that.
Benoit Gagnon. I'd like to apologize to Benoit Gagnon for the Americanization of their name.
Benoit Gagnon.
We got there.
Benoit Gagnon.
Yeah, I'll pray for about 5 minutes for that. No, I'm just kidding. I don't pray. I don't have that accent. What are you most looking forward to? Asks Benoit Gagnon. What are you most looking forward to?
Well, I think that there are like a lot of cool cards like Claim Fame for Ben that do not quite make it in Modern, and I'm really hoping that we get to see those cards shine in Pioneer.
Trigger Raven has Vexing Devil, I'm not mistaken, right?
No, it's an Absent Storm.
Ah, damn it.
No Vexing Devil.
I was seeing
You'll have to work a little harder
the 2
than that.
points, and I was like, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, you'll have to work a little bit harder than that.
Yeah. Okay. So I think like you said, I'm looking forward to a few things. Like, I think the thing I'm probably the most looking forward to is that when new standard sets now come out and they're pushing a theme in a new standard set that I think is really cool and gonna be exciting for standard. It means that if it's something that hasn't been supported in a long time, I don't need to see super busted Eternal cards printed or just another iteration to have enough redundancy to push it. Something like Knights, we only have like 2 sets worth of support here, really 1 strong set, but 2 sets of support, 3 I guess, is going to be a real deck. I believe that deck's going to be a real competitive deck.
I'm also like, I think that because the format's a little bit slower, you get to do like sweet big value plays, like particularly post bans. You get to do like sweet big value plays. Like I've seen some deck lists with Risen Reef and Master of Waves combo in it because Master of Waves makes an elemental for your devotion to blue.
That's
so
insane.
like a mono blue devotion splashing Risen Reef, or even like a dedicated elementals deck that just plays Master of Waves. I mean, it just seems like that doesn't quite make it in Modern, but I would be like really down to play that in Pioneer.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting because there's just like a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that like you'll see pop up in a daily that you think is really cool in Modern, or you'll see it in FNM, and you're like, somebody gets excited. They're like, I've been 3-0ing my FNM with this, and you're like, it's such a bummer for us when somebody will like post that, and you'll see it on Twitter, and you'll be like, I want to only say positive things about your list, except. Really, at this point, I've been so conditioned, I have to just tell you, these 12 cards are all bad. Replace them with these extremely expensive cards, and your deck will be better. And, like, what a bummer that is to have to say to people, because you realize that the power level of Modern just is what it is. This format will allow for those decks to be a little bit more reasonable.
Okay, I said Risen Reef Master of Waves. I take it back. Wilderness Reclamation is the card I'm most excited about in this format. I think it's a little bit slow for Modern with all these, like, you know, powerful, cheap interaction. It's just like, turn 4, I tap out for this dumb enchantment, and they're like, whatever, Mana Leak or Remand or something. And I'm like, oh no, I'm dying. Or I'm just dead on turn 4, right? I tap out for it and they kill me. But yeah, I mean, I think Wilderness Reclamation is a sweet card with the, like, you know, float your mana during your end step and then untap and then, like, play a big X spell like Expansion Explosion or Sphinx's Rev or something. I think that's the thing I'm most excited to do in Pioneer personally, because I think that, like, if my opponent is holding up at, like, a 3 mana counter spell, I can be, like, developing or ramping or, you know, building up my defenses with Teferi or something, give myself a little bit of time that I don't have in Modern.
Yeah, a Bant-colored Wilderness Reclamation deck with like 3 Fairy and Sphinx's Rev and Wilderness Rec all seem like being able to have 3 Fairy allow you to be casting on your
it's
opponent's
really
turn.
hard for me to like cut red for white in a deck. I'm not a big fan of white. I feel like maybe it's fairy's worth it. I don't know. I'm gonna work on a Wilderness Reclamation list, but I think that's the thing I'm most excited to do.
So I want to do 5 last questions, and then we'll get out of here. So guys, thank you all for watching. If you have a question that is just burning that you need to see answered, throw it in the chat here. We'll pick 5 last ones, and again, if anybody super chats, we'll knock those out first. Before we get to those last 5 questions, I had a question that I wanted to ask you, and it was just about, so Modern at its inception, people tried out control decks.
Yep.
And then control decks weren't viable because the format was so varied, and you ended up with these like mid-range decks like Jund that became kind of like the control of the format. I mean, they weren't totally, and people would play blue-white.
Thoughtseize doesn't care about what your opponent is playing, right?
But it took 5 years or something like that. Like 5-6 years until control decks became proper. Like 2.5 years ago, blue-white started to come on the scene.
And there was Jeskai, I think, before that.
But I would even say that those Jeskai decks, like the Jeskai Flash decks, the Geist decks, or even just like the Burn decks, they never felt as hard control as what you're talking about, which is like a deck that's, I mean, like the blue-white decks are just straight control decks now. All these, like, they play like 5 planeswalkers, and everything is like super, super reactive and varied. They look like traditional control lists. So do you think that this format starts out with control as a major player, or do you think it'll be similar to Modern at its inception, where it's too varied?
I think that, like, the existence of 3 minutes Fairy, 5 minutes Fairy, Supreme Verdict, Sphinx's Revelation is enough that people are definitely going to try it. The fact that the counter spells are pretty weak and the removal spells tend to start at 3 mana, I think, is maybe a little bit dicey for like strictly blue-white. Maybe Esper with like some Thoughtseize, Jace Vryn's Prodigy, or, you know, Search for His Kanta, or, you know, some some of that like early discard out of Esper might do the trick. But I think the counter spells are a little slow. It's going to be rough, but I think people are going to try it for sure because like Supreme Verdict is very powerful in this format. I think being a little bit slower and being uncounterable, just like blow up all your guys, nothing you can do about it, is going to be powerful, especially against like some of these strategies we're talking about, like Green Devotion, Black Devotion, Knights. Goblins. Like Supreme Verdict is just going to blast all these decks, and if you are a deck that can maximize Supreme Verdict, I think there's value there for sure.
Every single standard format has a control deck, basically, without fail. Like it's designed into standard, so you can pretty much assume. I think Marshall's point about all the things you listed to the Planeswalkers, other than the 2 copies you're probably playing of Mind Sculptor in your blue-white control deck in Modern, all those Planeswalkers are going to be legal in this format. They're all printed recently, so those are a lot of the things that tip the scales in favor of the blue-white control deck being so good, that I think will be really, really important. So, guys, I'm just going to pick 5 here because it looks like we're not doing the super chat thing. Ryan Welker asks, what do you think will be the future of this podcast? I think it's an interesting question. This is a joke title. We are not changing.
We love Modern.
Podcast. We're the Modern show.
Like Wizards of the Coast, we are not abandoning Modern.
Yeah, definitely not.
Modern Horizons just got printed. If anybody is wondering if Wizards is going to abandon Modern, I don't know why they would spend that much time and effort to make Modern Horizons and then be like, just kidding, we're done with Modern.
I think that did really well too. I think people really liked it.
Yeah, I'm sure it did.
So we definitely are not abandoning Modern at all. In fact, we are having a creative meeting literally after this show to talk about some of the expansion ideas we have for the brand, for Masters of Modern, for some of the things that we're excited to do. And there will probably be more content coming. Some will be about Modern, some will be about other stuff. But the main show and our main focus of the show is going to continue on exactly as it is. We may start streaming live more often. I think we'd like to do that.
Pioneer has a lot of novelty for brewers like us because it's new, but once it's not new and the dust settles, Modern's our format for sure.
100%. All right, number 2, we're going to read Random Dog asks, Cat Tribal? We get another cat each set or so?
I think the Lords in Cat Tribal are a little weak compared to, say, Goblins, Knights, Elves, Zombies, anything else. I think we would need them to be pushed a little bit. But yeah, I mean, cats are a popular tribe, and they keep getting a little bit of support here, a little bit of support there. I think
the Doran Pouncer's a sweet card.
I think cats have a future in Pioneer, perhaps not Modern. I think like the 5 mana Cat Lord.
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about, the one that gives them +1/+1 and lifelink.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's just like a little bit slow compared to like Merfolk having a 2 mana Lord and Goblins having like 3 mana Lords, and
they all get Metallic. You get Metallic Mimic in all of them, right? But you don't get Adaptive Automaton. I'm pretty sure. I feel like that's not.
I think the Adaptive Automaton's the old.
Yeah. Interesting.
Notably, also Dovin's Veto is legal.
Yes, that's
Dovin's Veto and Negate are both legal. I've actually seen some blue-white playing Essence Scatter because of the lack of 1 mana or 1 or 2 mana interaction. Like even 2 mana interaction in blue-white is pretty light. You get like Blessed Alliance.
Yeah. Judge is familiar.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a different deck, right? I have seen Spirits decks, actually, quite a few, playing Mausoleum Wanderer and Spellqueller.
Well, they've printed a lot of really good Spirits. All right,
and Supreme Phantom's legal as well.
Okay.
Yeah, Spirits actually is like a modern
you can
tribal.
Put Coco in there too if you want.
Yeah, Spirits is a modern tribal that gets most of its cards ported over into Pioneer.
Yeah, but blue-white and green-white are not color combos that you get much support for, so you end up just having to play the blue-green lands as your base, which is fine.
No, I mean you can like more reasonably play Glacial Fortress and Spirits probably. You're not as reliant on curving out as you would be in like a super aggro red deck.
Do you need to play green if you're?
You don't need to. You can just play blue-white. You can play green if you want access to Coco, which is very powerful, but you don't need it. You can also, with Oko, you can turn your Spellqueller into an Elk and they can never get their card back.
Is it possible Oko just gets banned in this format? It seems
possible. People are calling for it to be banned in Standard even.
Yeah, it's pretty fresh.
I've been seeing so many memes about what format on Arena with Oko do you want to play? It's Oko Arena.
All right, a couple last ones, guys. Somebody's asking here, Jack Pavich asks, what are your thoughts on safe decks that are tier 1, 2 that aren't going to be banned? Where do you think you can go if you want to play something that's just generally good, don't have to worry about your cards getting
Mono red.
Just there's no card in mono red that you think will get banned.
I think there could be cards in mono red that gets banned, but I think there will always be a red based aggro deck that's good. I think mono red is very safe. If you want to splash Boros Charm or even Atarka's Command, I think you're fine. I listed earlier why I think Atarka's Command is a little awkward, and I think I would lean towards Boros Charm. But yeah, I mean, I think that there will always be a good mono red deck in the format, and I think it'll just be tweaks. It'll be tweaks to your creature base. You know, maybe Eidolon of the Great Revel gets banned, or maybe...
How good is Eidolon of the Great Revel in this format?
Less good, but...
Still good, right? Yeah, I would think so.
I think it's one of one of the main reasons to want to play mono red, to be honest.
Rampaging Ferocidons is also in modern.
Rampaging Ferocidon and Eidolon, especially because of these combo decks that I'm talking about, like they need to be playing card selection to find their pieces. They're like playing Oath of Nissa to find their Saheeli. They're playing Saheeli, they've just taken 4 damage. And then your Rampaging Ferocidon makes it so they die if they fail at our combo you. And then like the Aetherworks Marvel, they're playing like Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot, take 2. Like
right.
like all these combo decks, like the Emery and Kethis combo decks that I think will exist with Mox Amber, they're like playing a bunch of stuff out of their graveyard and just like taking 1 billion damage.
So
and then Ferocidon does the same thing.
Jade Wheatley asks, what land cycle or series do you think will rise up to replace fetches? Temples, Painlands, Checklands? That's a good question. Let's see. Of those ones, I would probably guess the Painlands would be the first to rise up.
Well, what I think is interesting is that those are all good in different types of decks. Like, you're not just defaulting to fetch shocks in this format. Like, you have to think about your mana base and think about your deck's goals. Like, some decks are going to want to be playing like straight, pain lands or fast lands, and hopefully we get pain lands and fast lands in allied colors soon, so that we don't have this weird disparity with fast decks, or decks that want their mana untapped early. But yeah, like some decks are going to want that. Some decks are going to be more interested in check lands, like control decks that are looking for the game to go long don't want their 4th land to come in tapped, or their 5th land even, because they want to play Teferi, or they want to be playing Sphinx's Revelation, and
like Glacial Fortress seems like the check land most likely to see.
Totally, and Drowned Catacomb, but like there are going to be decks that would prefer to have Rootbound Crag. There's going to be decks that would prefer to have Copperline Gorge. There's going to be decks that would prefer to have maybe even the Battle for Zendikar or Cinderglade.
Let me ask you. So you have all of the 2nd generation Eldrazi in this. That's all in the Oath of the Gatewatch, right? Battle for Zendikar. And so you have Thought-Out Seer, and you have Reality Smasher, and you have Matter Reshaper, and you have the Blink guy.
You have the Eldrazi Mimic too.
Yeah, Mimic. So I do wonder, you don't really have access to what's your best fast mana land. Do we have anything that even does like an imitation, like anything that even gets you kind of close to Tron?
Castle Garenbrig.
Yeah, Castle Garenbrig and Nykthos are the 2 big ones, but those fit more into a Green Devotion deck than they would an Eldrazi deck.
Can't really play Nykthos with Eldrazi. That doesn't really work.
I think green ramp into Eldrazi, kind of like the classic standard Eldrazi decks that we've seen every time Eldrazi are legal. I think that's what you're going to see. You're going to be seeing like mono green, just like elf into Nykthos tap for a bunch of mana. I've actually seen some Leyline of Abundance decks that are playing the 8 elves. It adds Devotion as well. It adds 2 Devotion on turn 0, which like turbocharges your freaking Nykthos. Like if you go turn 1 or turn 0 Leyline of Abundance into turn 1 Elf, turn 2 Nykthos, you have how much mana right now? Elf taps for 2. You have 3 Devotion, so 5. You have like 6 mana on turn 2 or something. I mean, it's absurd.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of really interesting stuff. Stephen Nelson asks here, are you guys taking looks at deck lists from the chat? We aren't, actually. We're about to end the show here. We're just probably 2 minutes away. So one last time, guys, before you get out of here, please support us in any way you can.
If you have cool deck lists, we would love to take a look at them. Tweet at us. Go to our Discord. We have a Discord. We usually post it in the description of our YouTube videos, hopefully including this one if you stay tuned for a little bit. You can go to our Facebook group, official Masters of Modern Facebook group. If you tag us in any of these places, we will find your deck list, and I will comment on it for sure. Ben and Alex are a bit busier and not as good at using Discord in particular, but Facebook and Twitter, you can probably get some responses out of Alex. He's on there pretty often.
Yeah, he's pretty active. So yeah, you tweet those lists at us, share them there. Go to patreon.com/themmcast. It's financially, it's the best way to help the show grow and support us. Obviously, we have a producer over here. We love Marshall. He loves us. We pay our producer. So please help us continue to keep the show going, and we want to keep growing it. So check that out. We'll be on Twitter all the time. You guys can follow me at Ben Bateman Media.
I'm at Dudardd, DUDARDD.
The At the MMcast is the show. Marshall, where can the folks find you?
I am at Marsh Unfocused.
All right. And last time, guys, if you want to just hit that like button before you get out of here to even things out, do it. Helps us keep this video high in the standings because people are going to find it. We are going to be back next week. Lots of modern content. Really excited about it. I'm happy to be back. Thank you for returning. I'm going to be healthy soon. And Michael, thank you for hanging out and talking Magic today.
Yeah, for sure. Love to be on the show.
All right, guys. See you soon.